So operating from a space of fear versus a natural course of wellness. So one of the most important leaps to make is to not participate or engage in anything out of fear, and that's what I was alluding to when I started talking about the various food matrix. Don't eat foods because of what you fear, but instead there must be pleasure in the experience. For when we consume out of fear, that energy is still lodged in the body somewhere, and although you function on a strict regime, an adverse reaction will more likely emerge. You're running from illness. You have to stop and recognize that. Your core belief is that you are trying to avoid something. Your core belief is that you're running from something. Your core belief is that you have a fear of something happening to you. We have to own those beliefs. We have to accept them. And I do hear people make excuses. I don't say anything to them, but I know it's just an excuse because there's a fear. Well, I only do it because. I only do this because. If you're going to do any of those things, if you're going to eat raw food, if you're going to be vegetarian, it has to be, or it should be, because this is really what I enjoy, this is really what I want to do. You must examine the fear behind it, because that is why it doesn't work for you in the way that you want it to work, where somebody has been eating, like, who is it, Bragg, several of these people, they've been eating a certain way that would have been considered amazing. But then they die because of they got a food poisoning or something. See, that belief, because you're running from something, it never goes away. It's always there, and it looks for the opportune moment to attach to an emotion, an experience. It attaches based on a timing of when it decides to show its head. And that's all it's doing. It's actually showing its head that, hey, look, here's a code that's here, here's a program that's here. That's what those symptoms are saying. Here's a program that's over here, but we don't understand that, so we see it differently, and then we go to war with it. Okay, so all of these things I'm just touching on, because I'm going to get into some other really meaty stuff. But we need to take this path first before we go further, because we just want to get a step 1, step 2, step 3 as to, okay, how can we do this? How can we get rid of disease? How can we get it out of our minds? But you can't get rid of it if you don't see the journey involved in what you are and how you're thinking and what you're sitting on in terms of your beliefs. You don't do it. You tell yourself that you have, but you don't. You have to see and own all of what you're thinking, all of what you're made of, all of what is there, and it shows itself to us every day. But it's all covered over by our engagement with the physical world, because we have so many distractions, and we are so good at lying to ourselves and camouflaging and making excuses that we cover over those messages that are emerging, whether it be through someone else or coming from us, or that little pimple that's on your arm. We don't see that. Everything for us becomes a topical value. And if we question it, it's not a deep questioning. It's just surfacey enough. You engage a little of your consciousness, of your awareness, of your spiritual knowledge, and you move on. And yet the energy of that still exists. So that's why I'm making such emphasis on these things that you might say, well, I already know that. Well, if you already know that, and are you sick? Have you been getting sick? Do you have anything going on with you? Okay, you need to look at that. Okay, now as Patricia Bush talks about in her book, Freedom from Food, she reminds us that food is energy. It's like eating air, but we lend density to it by our perception of it and what we have already set in our minds as to its effect on our bodies, such as our fear of gaining weight from it, which is something that she talks about, but this engages everything. And I know I do it because we're all affected. We're all influenced by the collective thought stream, collective consciousness, collective beliefs about pretty much everything. So when we pick up a fruit or we pick up a donut, our belief system around the fruit or the donut, we've got two different belief systems going on. We're already going to eat the donut. We're like, okay, we already know this isn't good for me. So that's the first thing we tell ourselves. We already know that this isn't good for me. So your body says, oh, so this isn't good for us. So that means that if it's not good for us, that means I shouldn't take this and process it in a way that is just purely energy. I now need to give that the experience of what this isn't good for me means, what this, isn't good for the body means. Let me process it this way. Let me, let's shut down some of the processing systems or some of the chemicals that would be necessary, or the acids necessary to break down these certain things. Let's go ahead and do that so that the not good can happen. That's how we function in everything that we're doing. So yes, we are affected by our diets according to the coding in us and according to all those things that we are discussing here today. We are affected by our diets according to the coding in us. Now, when I'm talking about the coding in us, I'm not just talking about our obvious current belief system, but I'm talking about the coding in us or the potential in us for certain health conditions that are already programmed into us that we came in with, and it looks for an opportunity to emerge. It could be based, again, on an emotional experience. That's why shock can do what it does to you. That's why stress can have that kind of havoc on you. And all these various illnesses emerge from that because they lay latent. If the coding is already there, if the frequency is already there for certain things, then they only emerge when an opportunity, then when the appropriate moment arises and there is a like energy, an energy that acts as a